Hi, this is Fred Joyal. I'm here with Bernie Stoltz, and this is Limitless Success, brought to you by Fortune Management. Bernie Stoltz is the CEO of Fortune Management, and very excited to talk about 5 ways that a coach can increase your success. And so, Bernie, welcome to the episode.
Hi, Fred. Good to be with you again, buddy.
So give me an understanding of Fortune as a business. I know it's been around for quite a while, and it's a very unique organization.
Well, exactly. I mean, it's exciting times at Fortune Management right now for a lot of reasons. I mean, first of all, we are entering into our 30th year as an executive coaching and practice management company for dentists. Uh, Quite frankly, the team that has stood the test of time, so to speak. Um, and And so it's exciting times for a lot of reasons. Number one is that it's exciting times for dentistry, and it's evolving. And I think really what Fortune has always been over the 30 years is it's really been committed to wearing three major hats for every one of our clients around the country. I mean, at this point, we have 110 practice advisor executive coaches in about 80 markets in North America that oversee over 1,200 dental practices, which probably equates to over $2 billion a year worth of dentistry. And it always comes down to three things of the three hats that we've got to serve our clients and have for almost 30 years. One being that of a true executive coach, both personally and professionally. And that's really got to be a WIT, or whatever it takes kind of relationship. The second hat is that of practice advisor, and making sure that our clients are not reinventing the wheel and that understanding that success leaves clues.
Yeah, Bernie, hang on 1 second, because we've got, if you're listening to this webinar live, would you please mute yourself? Because we can hear whatever you're doing in the background. So I appreciate if you would all mute yourself. This conference won't allow me to do it because we're allowing you all in here to watch. So yes, so that was number two.
And then number three is, and I think this is one of the big differentiators from a Fortune coach to potentially anybody else out there in the coaching business, is also that they also have to serve as key business strategists. And that's huge right now as dentistry evolves through the new millennium. So, that's a little bit about what Fortune, of course, what I always tell people is that it's more than just a 2-minute elevator speech at this point. What I always tell people is go to our national website, fortunemgmt.com, and you'll see really what I say all the time in live audiences, which is Fortune now has developed to be the most total immersion postgraduate program anywhere on planet Earth for a dentist. And there's so many different divisions and laterals and really a little bit of something for everybody. So I think the website's key to telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very comprehensive service. It's beyond just someone coaching you and, to dealing with every aspect of the business. And but let's get into just the idea of why someone should want to coach, why people need coaching. Because I think
absolutely.
A lot of people go, I'm already good at what I do, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't care how good you are. Bottom line is everybody, every executive, every human being has blind spots.
Yeah.
And so what having a coach in your corner does is absolutely should be asking you different questions you hadn't thought about. I mean, one of the greatest questions, and it actually came out of Ray Dalio's book, Principles, which I see is right behind your head there. And that is when somebody knows, when one of our doctors, for instance, That's right. When one of our doctors, makes a decision, one of the greatest coaching questions is especially when they know they're right, when they're adamant about it, is to say, well, how do you know you're right? Which is a great question, which opens things up. But I think let's go back to all of the coaching processes of why it's so important. First of all, is a lot of people, not everybody, but a lot of people are not laser focused on what the mission is, what the goal is. So one of the things that our coaches have received extensive training on is to really ask 5 questions whenever we're doing an intake process. In fact, it doesn't have to be an intake process. I'll take a phone call from a doctor anywhere in America, and I'm always going to lead with 5 questions. Question number 1, where are you at right now? And that's a big question, and that means both personally, as far as how's your life going, and are you living a life on choice, and are you using your voice, right? So it's where you're at right now, which is also establishes point A. In other words, where are you at right now, as we said. Second question is, how'd you get there? Which can be a great story, it can be a success story, or it can be a nightmare, depending on where that doctor is in their career, where they are in their life. But it's historical. It's how did you get there? Third question is always the most important one, and that is, where do you want to go? And that's the vision question.
Yeah.
And a good coach will get really, really detailed on that, because it's not just about where do you want to be with your practice. It's too easy just to fall into the trap of just what I want to do in collections next year, or even how many days off I want to take, or what I want my team to look like. Those are important questions. But we also have to always, I think a great coach is someone who always takes that person to the next level of a bigger picture. Bigger picture is, okay, so great. So you've got a great practice set of goals and visions, but how does that fit into how you're mastering your life? Emotionally, physically, relationships, your spirituality, your contribution. How is this set of goals for your practice? Is this going to fulfill your power of purpose on the career side? And then ultimately, too, is financial independence, financial freedom. It's one of the things we've stood for as long as this company's been in existence. So third question is a loaded question, and a great quote. A great coach really drills down deep. Fourth question that I always like to ask people is, do you have a plan in place to get yourself there? Now, that is purposely asked because I want to know if people do. Most people don't, or they think they do, but there's a lot of people who just will admit, no, I don't, right? It's a pain question. And then the fifth question I think that any great person of service should ask is, how can I help? How do you see us helping you? Now, as far as the attributes of a coach, I think I've said some of them already, which is to get them really, really laser focused on what the vision is. And also that means single-mindedness. This fallacy about multitasking and having 27 to-do list items, that's ridiculous. And bottom line is, if you study success, whether it be Walt Disney, Bill Gates, or whoever you want to study through the years, it was the power of single-mindedness and knowing what was that one thing that was most important that we needed to execute in all parts of our life. So I think a great coach will get clarity for people. I think a great coach is also good at taking somebody through a reality check of where are they at right now. In other words, you got to have, all of coaching is about point A and point B. Point A is where you're at now. Point B is, if this thing was amazing, what would it look like? Not perfect, because there's no such thing. But if it was amazing, what would this look like? Which is point B, right? And then what a great coach does is helps them with a strategy or a set of strategies to get from point A to point B. Now, I also want to make sure that everybody knows no coach is any better than anybody else. The only thing that a coach like in Fortune's case, has on their side is in some cases they've done it thousands of times before with thousands of practices, and success does leave clues. So I think those are huge attributes. I think also here's some other things I've always said about coaching. A great coach is someone who will hold you accountable to your hopes, your dreams, your vision, once we're clear about why you want what you want. I think that's important first. But once that doctor has given one of our coaches permission to coach them, and by the way, make no mistake, there has to be permission. But once there's permission, then I think the coach's job is to continuously hold that up, almost like a mirror in their face. To say, look, this is who you said you wanted to be. This is where you said you wanted to go. This is what you said you wanted to have. And until you take away that permission, this is where we're going to go. And, no different than a fitness coach, who sometimes has to be like a drill sergeant. But I also would go the other way and say, look, great coaches should always come from a loving place. I think a great coach always is willing to identify and has the ability to identify the individual beauty in every person that they coach. I think the person who is being coached, they also have to ask themselves some questions. Number one, do I like this person? Do I trust this person? Is this person someone who I'm willing to give permission to? So there's a huge part of it. I think, there's a great quote that I use a lot when it comes to coaching, and it comes from a line in a song that Will Smith wrote for his little son about 15 years ago. And it says, life will attack. You will slide off track. And I got your back. A good coach has that doctor's back, no matter what. The other thing I would say to doctors, and I've had to say this hundreds of times in my career, is that, everybody's in the business of the maximization of human capital and employing people and building a team and building a culture. And a lot of times people on that team will leave. And it may not be the doctor's fault. It may not be the culture's fault. And one thing that a coach has to do is sit with that doctor and say, look, people will come and people will go. And people will make decisions about their career and about their life with no regards to your practice or to you. And you got to be okay with that. And your coach will never leave you. A great coach never leaves you. So I think there's just a ton of attributes. I think a coach also has to be just as committed to that vision as the person they're coaching, but they can't own it. They have to, the person who owns the dream has to own it. Make sense?
Yeah. And so part of it is what I'm hearing also is that embedded in this idea is that no matter where you're at, you're always going to need a coach. We all, successful people all need lifelong coaching. And I think a lot of dentists don't get that. I think they think that's something, coaching is something they do in spurts to get them up to a certain number or something like that. And so how do we help? Because I always use the example of like, do you think, that when somebody, does 60 home runs in their full season of baseball, they go, I'm there. I can stop. I can get rid of my batting coach finally. They never do that. They keep going. But a lot of people in business, and I see dentists doing it. You see that too, don't you?
Well, I do. In fact, one of the most painful things that I see, even when doctors come through, say, a 30-month engagement or program with us, a lot of times doctors, because of the education process, they will sometimes see us as just another program that they've now completed or a course that they've now completed. And what I have to explain to people is, and it's kind of a metaphor, I'll say, look, you don't go to the gym for one time and declare yourself healthy. Or you don't even go to the gym and work out for a year and then say, well, I'm good now. I'm going to take off the rest of my life. You know that doesn't work. Well, it's the same thing in business acumen. It's the same thing in thinking. You know, one of the fundamental core beliefs of Fortune and of any great coach should be constant and never ending improvement. And always believing that there's always another level. I mean, you know, look at the coaches that Tiger Woods has gone through over his career. Look at the coach. You study anybody great, and they are surrounded with a great
3 coaches. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you know what's funny is, like, you know, today, you know, who's in the limelight a lot are athletes and celebrities, right? So the athlete, obviously, you know, you take a baseball player, I mean, they've probably got a half a dozen. If you think about their team of coaches, they've got, first of all, an agent, they've got a publicist, they've got a hitting instructor, they've got a weight and conditioning, they've got a dietitian, they've got a whole team. But also take a look at somebody like a Julia Roberts when she goes across the screen and collects an Oscar and maybe gets $20 million a picture. There is a huge team behind her. All those same people, voice coaches and stylists and all that. So, you know, that's the other cool thing. If I relate that back to Fortune, is that when a doctor comes on to Fortune, they're not just getting one coach. It's not just one personality. This is a set of coaches that are specializing in different dimensions of their business. And I mean, even take a look at our newest division, Fortune 50, which you're part of. I mean, you think about that. These doctors now are surrounding themselves with not just a coach on the front line, but a whole virtual board of directors. We're supplying them now with a chief strategy officer. We're supplying them with a chief investment officer, a chief marketing officer, a chief legal strategist. So, I mean, where do you get that kind of power? Why would you not seek that out?
And they also, in Fortune 50, which is really, it spreads out to all of Fortune, really, is they have that peer group that is also trying to excel, that they're going to learn from. They realize, you know, I remember the last Fortune 50, and somebody presented a real problem. They had lost all of their team and they were panicked. They said, we bought this practice, we lost everybody. They all quit in a month. We don't know what to do. And I said we had a breakout session. I said, how many practices has this happened to? And they all raised their hands. And I said, you're not alone. And everybody went, a year from now, this is going to be great. And this is what you do. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, it turned into this totally helpful discussion where they realized they had peers who had been through stuff. And that's what Fortune has access to, is thousands of practices you've helped, that, you know, that you can keep them from making the mistakes or thinking these mistakes have no way out.
Well, that's absolutely right. And here's been my experience of over 30 years too, is that dentistry is an interesting profession, and it's different. It's changing now. It's evolving where we're seeing multi-specialty, more practitioners under one roof. But I mean, if you look back over the last 30 years, most dentists practice in an envelope. In other words, they're in those 4 walls. They've got that one team, and if they're not involved with something like Fortune, then what are they doing now? They're not exposed, unless maybe they're going to get it at a convention or a seminar, but they really live in an envelope, and they're very isolated, and that can be lonely. Yeah. And so, yeah, it is the Me Too conversation of, look, there's other practices going through it. You know what's even more painful is seeing the young dentists today who are coming out, and they're in their first year, 2 years of practice, And they are going to make the same mistakes that the young dentist 20 years ago made. That's even more, to me, that's crazy because there's no excuse for it. In other words, I could see, 30 years ago, there weren't a lot of practice management resources out there.
Yeah.
And there wasn't a lot of good executive coaching programs. But today, a young dentist who is trying to reinvent the wheel or trying to cheap out by doing it on their own or figuring out by trial and error, that is the most expensive university they will ever attend. It's funny. I've done this over the years. I'll be in a live seminar, and maybe it's a public event where I've got maybe 100 doctors who are not Fortune clients. And by the way, I would invite anyone who's watching this today to do this exercise. And that is, basically, I want you to, if you're the doctor, I want you to think in your head real quick, what's the largest single month of collections you've ever had in your career thus far? And everybody knows what that is. That was the number. Then what I asked them to do is right below that number, write what the current average monthly collections are in that practice. Now, typically what I've seen over the years is that there is a 20 to 30% difference there. So let's play with some numbers. Let's say that maybe the best month that practice ever had was $100,000, but typically they're averaging $70,000 a month. So I asked them to take that number, subtract it from the upper number. That leaves you, in this case, by example, $30,000. Now what I want that doctor to do is multiply that by 10. Put another zero behind that. That's now $300,000. I would make an argument that that's the tuition that doctors across the country are currently paying to attend a university called the School of Hard Knocks. And by the way, you get nothing for it.
There is no diploma for that.
And I'd also make one other comment, which is most of those people don't even know what their true real total higher number could be. So, and by the way, that's on $100,000 a month practice. What if it's a $500,000 year? What if it's a $6 million operation?
Yeah.
So I mean, and by the way, we don't cost that much, not even close. That's the other thing that I always make sure that all of our doctors know is that part of our commitment, I would say, and this is important, coming right from the CEO of the company, is that our coaches need to pay their own way. In other words, if we're not bringing a legitimate ROI to what our monthly retainer is, then we shouldn't be there. We're also the only one of our kind in the whole profession, in the whole industry, nationwide. We are the only coaching organization that does not hide behind a contract. Reason we don't is because it would violate the true essence of what coaching is. I already said it. Coaching, for someone to coach somebody else, you've got to like them, you got to trust them, you got to believe in them, and they have to be able to give you results. And so I make this statement all over the country too, and I'm saying it today so that all of our coaches can hear it. It's what I call putting your ass on the line. Putting your ass on the line in Fortune means that you walk into any one of your doctors when they first come on and you say, and doctor, you can fire us anytime you want. Yeah. And the doctor will look at us and say, well, why would you say that? Why would you do that? That's bad business. No, what that is that's giving you certainty that we believe in what we do and certainty that you haven't made a mistake in hiring us or retaining us. So that's all huge.
Well, and that's part of it, because I was going to ask you, how do you assess whether you have the right coach? And the answer is right there. It should be demonstrable. And one of the things a good coach is going to do is is help you with understanding your finances. I think a lot of dentists don't have that. And then the coach can point to what's happening in the practice and the influence that they've had on the practice. A lot of doctors don't even know their numbers, or they don't know how to understand their numbers.
Well, that's right. And that's a distinction that every doctor ought to know about any fortune coach. As I said, we got about 110 of them in 80 markets. And I will tell you that they are going through constant and continual training to develop their skill sets underneath every one of those hats. So for instance, let's talk about the executive coaching side. Well, we know there's two parts to that. First of all, there's life coaching, and so life coaching means that a fortune coach is expected to talk to them about how to have an incredible life. If you look at our tagline to our company, it's extraordinary practice, extraordinary life. Yep. And to be honest, the extraordinary life should come first, right? And by the way, so they've got to talk to each doctor about, hey, let's talk about what life mastery is. Life mastery is 6 areas, right? It's your emotional and mental toughness and understanding that you get to choose your emotions and the emotions you're going to live through every single day. Number 2, your physical presence. Energy is the fuel of excellence. How can we be in the healthcare industry and be coaches to doctors and let them abuse their own bodies or not have the energy? Third thing is relationships. And one of the things that a fortune coach is going to do for a doctor is going to make them a better communicator. Communication is the key. Leadership is the key, right? Fourth thing is how do we get them to really enjoy the spirit of contribution? The secret to living is giving, as one of our original co-founders, Tony Robbins, says all the time. The fifth thing is get them really, really clear about their career. And is it purposeful work? Now that's another thing. We take on all kinds of different dentists. Some love clinical dentistry. Some not so much. Some would rather really make that move to an entrepreneurial or dentrepreneur, as we call them today. So a great coach is willing to give them the freedom, the permission slip to be who they want to be in their career, so that it's purposeful, so that it's not a job, right? And then the sixth part is we got to focus on financial freedom, one of the end games. And that doesn't mean retirement, because retirement's a sucky word, as you know. You and I will never retire, Fred. We will never retire. Why would we quit doing something that we love to do? So a great coach is someone who helps people to continue to enjoy loving what they do. Now, under that second hat of a coach, and again, these are the things that make kind of a fortune coach unique. Under that second hat is practice advisor. Now, if you want to call that practice management, I think that's part of it. But I think it's bigger. Our coaches are trained with the utmost of skills in business acumen. That means knowing how to read a balance sheet and a P&L and all the monitors, but also it's putting the systems in place so that we've got a repeatable step and repeat process in that practice. So fortune coach is going to bring that to the table as well. But then they also have another gear. And then the other gear to me is the one that's mission critical as we head into the year 2020. And that is key business strategist. Because nowadays it's about getting our doctors clear about where dentistry is going. And they can't have any, and these are where the blind spots come in. Because you and I joke about it all the time, but we cannot continue to operate dental practices like taxi cabs. We've got to think about Uber, right? And so, in the book that I released last year, The Win-Win Outcome, it's all about showing private practitioner dentistry how to evolve to the next level. There's 3 paths that dentistry is going down in this country today. One being obviously the DSO model. That's not going away. It's well funded. It's profitable. There's a lot that you can learn from that. But then you go to the antithesis of that. You go all the way to the other end of the spectrum, and you still got the single practitioner trying to work 32 hours a week, trying to deal with the insurance issues, trying to deal with keeping up with paying a well-paid team, investing $500,000 into a CEREC, a cone beam, and a Soleil laser, and then trying to justify having it sit there and only use 32 hours a week, and at the same time having a beautiful facility and a well-paid team. That is a blind spot for thousands of dentists in this country. And so what we have to do is we got to give them solutions. And the solutions to me are pretty clear. I mean, they're in my book, and that is bringing economy of scale into the conversation. Understanding that two dentists coming together, if they're both $1 million a year practitioners, we can successfully bring both of them under one roof and drop 60 cents of that second $1 million. 60% of that second million can drop immediately to the bottom line. And better product, better practice. Why? Well, because we've got a better paid team. We've got better technology being used more than 32 hours a week. We can also we can also service them more hours, more availability, better facility.
Yeah, they're a more convenient practice.
Absolutely. So, and then as far as key business strategy, it's also showing them how to take advantage of mergers and acquisitions today. We know that there are what we call 5,000, what I would call tear down dental practices in this country today. You know, we talk about practices today very similar to the housing market, right? So we know we've got brand new construction housing, just like we've got brand new de novo practices. That will continue to be in vogue. The banks would rather lend $750,000 for a brand new facility than to buy one that's got 20 years of wear and tear on it. So we know there's that. We know there's fixer-upper practices, which can be great for what we call reverse mergers. But then there's also teardowns. Teardowns are the late career dentists, which really the only intrinsic value left of those practices is two things. Hopefully the doctor's good reputation in the community and the patient base. So part of our advisory group is to show our doctors how to capitalize on that, and that window is going to close. So time is of the essence on that as well.
Yeah, and that's really the point, is where dentistry's been on sort of a slow evolutionary track for a long time, but now it's getting disrupted more and more, and you need help from the outside telling you what's changing, you know, what vendors to use, how to incorporate technology. Like, let's not buy all these things at once. What order do we buy them in? How do we implement them? How do we tell our patient base? And then maybe we need an assistant or an associate in here that understands this technology and accelerates that process. That's a lot of what a coach does too.
Well, exactly. And, you know, you gave a speech that I watched about 6 months ago, and you made a very, very true statement. You said, we now live in a time that is actually the slowest rate of evolution and change from here on out. In other words, it's just going to get faster and faster and faster. And to some of the things that you just said, not all technology is good. There's a lot of crap out there.
Yeah.
Right. So another thing that we've got to do is we've got to be able to tap into all of our resources internationally so that, again, we can save that doctor from investing in the wrong piece of equipment. Right. But then it's also about, it's not just the equipment. Like for instance, you know, there's two ways that I see CEREC coming into an office today. One is the doctor's excited about it. They're really into the clinical part of it. They buy it. They want to operate it themselves. They want to master every facet of it, and that's great. And they should do that. But where we come in is to say yes, and this is just a key component to a bigger conversation called digital workflow. Because in a perfect scenario, what do we really want? We really want the whole team to master that, so that the team is scanning and designing and milling and doing all those things. And so those are some of the nuances. I mean, one little thing, one little shift like that in a practice can change the scope of a doctor's career immensely. That's why I say it, part of great coaching is always about getting them focused on what are the most important shifts that we need to make right now, that by doing those things could eliminate 10 other headaches in your practice.
Yeah, and that's really it, and really the first step, just like with a patient, is to run a diagnostic. Where are you? And it's your 5 questions is that basic diagnostic, but then a coach really needs to come in and analyze what's going on. What's your reporting? What's your team look like? What's your patient base? All of these things. How old is your patient base? How many new patients are you seeing? What are you paying in marketing to get a new patient? What's happening with your neighborhood? What does this facility look and feel like? All of those things are part of that initial diagnosis of the practice, and then you say what you're going to treat first.
That's exactly right. One of the mottos that we have, and I'm very proud that we operate this way as an organization, and that is, if we teach a concept, then we do it ourselves. And if we don't teach it, we don't do it. Well, one of the things that we've taught doctors forever is diagnosis without examination is malpractice. It is for them, but it is for us as well. I was just at the ADA last week, and a doctor came up to us very, very inquisitive about us, almost to the point where wanted to like hire us on the spot. And I go, doctor, I'm very complimented by that, but that's not how we do things. So what we do in our business is we first of all want to always lead with our giving hand. So one of the things that we do is we do a complete practice analysis and opportunity assessment before we take a client on anywhere. And by the way, that's where we're establishing a really, really crystal clear starting point for not just the relationship, but for the practice. That's that point A I talked about, right? And then what we would also do in a perfect scenario is take that doctor or doctor and spouse to lunch, and we'd say, okay, now let's visioneer. Let's talk about where we're going to go here. If this thing was great a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, share that with me. And so once we've got that, then we can put about a 15-page report together, which is what we do, and come back to them and say, look, this is what you said you wanted. Here's where you're at now. And here is somewhat of a strategy, very high-level strategy of where we're going to get from A to B. And we know with certainty that we can certainly help you. So I think that's a process I would invite every dentist in America to go through. You can't lose, you can only win with that. And it's an amazing amount of information, but also a real eye opener. The other thing too is, the way we break it down when we're analyzing that practice is let's get clear on the destination. That's the vision. But then also we look at all 5 of those engines. And I'm not going to talk about what's in those engines, but I will say that any doctor or team that does not have full awareness of all 5 of those engines, as they're listening to me today, really needs to get a hold of a coach. So what are those 5? Number 1, your financial engine. Number 2, your systems engine. Number 3, your clinical and technology engine. Number 4, your marketing engine. And number 5, your people engine. So that's really, really, those are the engines that are going to drive the dream. So I'd highly invite people to take a look at that process.
And those are all gears that have to spin and mesh properly, or one not working will stop the whole thing. And a lot of times the doctors don't see it. I mean, that to me, the beauty of a coach many times it's just somebody who is at 30,000 feet and walks and has seen so much before. I mean, you can have a conversation with a doctor and probably tell him what he's grossing, what his staff issues are, and what his lack of vision is causing, right? All in probably a 15-minute or maybe a 10-minute conversation, or maybe by the look on her face. And so that's what this is about, is running a diagnostic and then getting permission, as you say. It's like, look, we're going to change things. If you don't want to change any of the stuff that's going on, this is the way to maintain exactly where you are or begin a slow downward spiral. But if you're ready to change, we're going to start to sequence the things that are going to make a difference and get you closer to your vision. And it may be articulating that vision. That may be where you have to start. With so many doctors, they've gotten in the weeds of showing up every day and what patient am I seeing now, and they're just moving operatory to operatory. And a great coach lifts them up and says, okay, that's what you do every day. Why are we doing it? Where are we going as we do it? And how can we do it better? How can it be more purposeful in terms of realizing a better life?
Well, that's right. And here are the doctors watching or listening to this today that I'm most concerned about. The ones who say, I'm good as I am, or I'm comfortable, or I've got a fairly good practice, or I'm making a good living. That's the death rattle. As Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, used to say, when you're green, you grow, and you're ripe, you rot, and there's no in between, right? And so I'm really, really concerned about any doctor who says I'm good the way I am. It's even the same really to we'll do, our accredited training universities all over the country, and you'll see people on the team come in. Maybe it's a session one, which is all about life skills and the foundation of living a greater life. And they come in with their arms folded and say, I'm great the way I am. My life's great the way it is. There's always another level to your life, to your business. That's part of what coaching is all about.
Yeah, and great is a place you can move up from. Great is not a destination. Great is, I feel good about this. And the really great people go, I think there's a little bit more. I think there's a little bit better. I think there's a little bit different. I'm going to ask people who are listening to also mute themselves if you've just jumped into this, because we're hearing what you're doing with your papers, Joanne.
Yeah, we're hearing and we're seeing your screen too.
And the kids in the background and stuff like that. Someday I'm going to figure out how to mute the attendees, but I haven't figured out on this yet. But
well, Fred, I want to say one more thing too, as far as the value of coaching, and that is the greatest place that a coach should really live. There's I always talk about 3 areas of knowledge, whether it be in business or in life. We know what we know. We know what we don't know. But see, you're not going to get in trouble with those 2 or miss out on opportunities. The place where you're going to miss out on all the growth and excitement and fun stuff in life is that 3rd area, which is, I don't even know what I don't even know.
Right.
And great coaches are people who will do that. Like, for instance, if I kind of shift off into the financial side of it right now, one of the big things that's going on in the profession right now is, or at least from our standpoint, is getting our doctors to believe and to understand and to know what's possible for them financially.
Yeah.
So, for instance, today, when a doctor comes to Fortune, in a perfect scenario, I want them to be paid and enjoy being paid 4 different ways. I want them to be paid for holding a handpiece, and that can be the optional. Some of them move beyond that. But I also want them to be paid for being the CEO of their company. I also want them to be paid as the shareholder in their practice for making the investment. And in the best case scenario, I also want them to be the landlord and pay themselves rent. So it's really, really important. Now, the way that we get them there is by starting to get the profession more focused on those magic letters called EBITDA. EBITDA And by the way, I mean, we're trying to retrain the whole dental consulting profession right now, because too many of our doctors are still getting their monthly or quarterly income and expense reports based on just what their overhead is and what their profitability is, but they're including them doing the work as a wet finger dentist in that. That's really not an accurate way if you're really looking at it, the valuation of a business through EBITDA.
Yeah.
And the big key here, and I want everyone to hear me on this, is that the way we're valuating practices in this country is changing. You know, the banks are, you know, traditionally what you've heard in the past is, well, you know, practice can be worth anywhere from a low of 50, 60% of top line collections to maybe 90 or 100, maybe the medium average is 70, 75, 80%. But what if we can help them to grow businesses with better EBITDA so that they're sellable at 3 times that amount?
Yeah.
You know, what if they're worth 10x? What if $1 million practice with 200,000 in true EBITDA? What if we could make that worth 2 million at sale time? So there's a huge financial impact that not having coaches to lead you through that process can cost. Like I said, that school of hard knocks and the school of not knowing, it's really expensive.
Yeah, and so one of the last things I want to talk about is we live in an age where doctors need to start thinking about transition as a general concept much sooner than, oh, I'm ready to retire. It's an ongoing thought process, and I think this is where coaching really comes in, especially in this day and age where there are predominance of acquisitions going on by DSOs and things like that. So,
yeah, no, I mean, there again, that to me that falls under the I don't know what I don't know. Like, I'll give you an example. I was just golfing a couple weeks ago, not with a dentist, but with a pediatrician. 72 years old, and he finds out what business I'm in and who I am, what I do, and he goes, yeah, he goes, you know, I'm going to be wrapping it up in the next couple of years. And his idea of a transition is he's going to shut down his office and he's going to hand over his charts to another young pediatrician and get zero value for his asset. There's still a crazy thinking out there. It's not that dramatic in dentistry, but there is still some, I guess, just the whole concept of transition. First of all, detach that word from the word retirement.
right.
In other words, the first thing I want to ask a dentist is, well, do you want to transition from your business, or do you want to transition from just being a wet finger dentist? And if we can do a great job of building the goose that lays the golden eggs, maybe you don't want to sell it, and maybe you can take more of a CEO role. The other thing that's huge is learning how to recruit and bring the next generational dentist in as associates and minority partners, and at the same time taking advantage of economy of scale. So our coaches have been trained to show them how to do all of that stuff.
Okay, I'm going to ask Gene Williams specifically to mute your phone or whatever you're listening to this on, because we can hear.
Okay.
And so just to wrap this up, you've got clarity, you've got systems, you've got leadership, communication, guidance, you've got vision, design, and support, and you've got accountability, all as part of what happens with a coach. And so no matter who you are, I think, and where you are in any business, you want to get better. You can't do it all on your own. And there are people out there who know better. Finding a great coach is essential. Having coaching throughout your life, ongoing, lifelong coaching is part of your lifelong learning. And I mean, these guys know they're getting continuing education. Dentists know that they're supposed to be getting that. Their whole team is getting it. Coaching is the epitome of lifelong continuing education.
Well, I agree. And I mean, the proof's in the pudding. We are an organization now that's, as I said before, is about ready to turn 30 years old. We have doctors who have been with our organization as long as we have been an organization. These are the ones that understand the value of long-term and constant coaching. And, and here's what you want to think about. What is the role of a coach beyond the first maybe 2 or 3 years? I'll tell you exactly what it is. It's to continually expand the vision of the person that they are coaching. And that is unlimited, right? So bottom line, great coaching should be for a lifetime. And so I invite anyone who's out there to get a hold of one of our coaches, go to our website, do what it takes to just explore that third area of knowledge, which is maybe you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to wrap up Limitless Success here. Thank you very much, Bernie. This is very valuable information. I hope we're going to distribute this so a lot of people can take advantage of this understanding of why you want lifelong coaching. So thank you, Bernie, and we will both see you all out there on the road.
You got it. Thanks, Fred.